Okay, can I share my screen?
Yes, you can share the screen. So the life of musician, we will record it so that we can share it with the audience.
Okay, do you see my screen?
Yeah, perfectly.
Okay, so for many musicians and societies, this is the goal, like the full hall of audience and a world-class orchestra and a world-class hall. But how do we get here? It's very complicated and it's very expensive. So it all starts with education. So classical music is very complicated. It takes a lifetime to master. And many instruments you need to start at 6, 7 year olds, like especially the most popular instruments like the violin and the piano. Most string instruments in the piano, you have to start at 6 or 7 or you're too late. There are some exceptions where you can become a professional if you start later, but very few. For the other instruments like brass instruments and woodwind instruments or percussion, you can start later, like 10, 11, 12. That's usually the normal age when you start with those. But for the most popular ones, they're actually the hardest, I would say. And it's the most repertoire for them, for the violin and viola. Then for violin and piano, there's in a life, it's not going to be one lifetime is not long enough for you to cover all the repertoire written for those instruments. And where it all starts, it's at a school. So this is the Plovdiv Music School, which is a very unique type of school in the world. Actually, when I came to the US, I was surprised that this type of schools don't exist here. And we have to thank for this type of schools in Bulgaria to the communists who created them in the late 40s. I mean, they nationalized the buildings, they nationalized a lot of things. But I'm not a big communist supporter in general, but I think this is a good one of the really cool things they did. So this school, you start at 6-year-old and you can go until 12th grade, no, 18-year-old. And then from there on, I mean, nobody who graduates here is finished musician. You have to go to a conservatory and then you still learn all your life. But most professionals become professionals in their 20s, like mid-20s to late 20s. Like they're ready to enter the workforce. So really it takes long time. What's unique about this school is there are a lot of resources and they're for individual students. So what's unique is you have 2 lessons a week covered, private lessons, one-on-one. Then you have another coaching with the pianist because music is almost always playing with other people. So you have to learn how to do that well. And then you have all the normal subjects of a school plus but that's only 50% of the subjects you take at this school. The other 50% are specialized musical classes, all different types, like harmony, solfege, developing your hearing and your singing, because that's very important. And it's an amazing institution that actually, unfortunately, here in the US is almost non-existent. And the only way here for a kid to become a professional musician, if their parents have money to pay for it, for private lessons, basically, to pay privately for everything that this school, for example, that Plovdiv offers for free. And I think this is a very cool thing. For example, my wife is a professional musician, she's American. But if her parents didn't spend a ton of money when she was young, and also for college and for other things and for instrument, it's impossible. It's just money matters. And that's why in the US now they're thinking about there are only white people in classical music here. And why aren't there more minorities? And the main reason is money. It's a huge investment to get a musical education, especially a good one. And up to now, only upper middle class white families have been able to afford that. So I don't know how it's going to change here. Probably some social things need to change, but it's very expensive to get education for it, and it takes a lot of practicing. So I would compare musicians like Formula One drivers, because we practice every day. We perform. I mean, as a professional, you perform every week. At my job, I'll talk about my job a little bit later, even though there is not a slide about it. We usually have 3 concerts a week: Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday afternoon. And we have 4 rehearsals before that. And that's every week. And every week we perform different music. And I don't know how many of you have watched Drive to Survive, the Formula One show on Netflix, but the way we prepare is very similar to the way the drivers prepare. I mean, we don't have the same resources and like private trainers and stuff like that, but it's a lot of mental work and a lot of physical work, which these guys do. And this is a good quote. If I miss 1 day of practice, I notice it. If I miss 2 days, the critics notice it. And if I miss 3 days, the audience notices it. And this is from a Polish pianist who was soloist in the beginning of the 20th century. And it is absolutely true. You have to do it every day because there are 2 components of playing. One is mental and one is physical. And physical is very important because you have to do it every day, because if you don't do it, your hands forget. Even if your brain is at 100%, everything is great. If your hands forget, and it's a very unique skills you need for playing an instrument that you don't use in anything else in life. So if you don't practice, you're not gonna use your hands in that certain way in your muscles, and they're gonna forget. So it's imperative to practice every day. Otherwise, you go downhill very quickly. And that's one of the hardest. Our profession is very hard because if you don't maintain physical and mental ability at very high level all the time, all your life, doesn't matter what happens, what else happens in your life, you deteriorate very quickly. And it's very obvious, not just to you, but to everybody after a while.
Koko, can I make a comment?
Yes.
I used to travel with a pianist a lot for work. And in the evenings, because he always said, yes, I practice every day. And in the evening, I thought, what is he going to do to practice? Because there's no piano in the room. We were sharing a room. And suddenly he sat on the ground, actually. And he started playing on the bed. And he was playing whole pieces that he had to rehearse, but he was playing it on the bed. And this was a similar comment that he made, but he called it a little bit different. But it was indeed the practice of the fingers. The fingers should not forget where they need to be placed. So how do you do that when you're traveling and you don't have a violina with you?
Well, I always have my violin with me. Yes, pianists have it harder because they cannot bring their instrument with them. But my instrument is small enough that I can travel with it. So when I don't travel with my instrument, which is very rare, it feels weird because it's just part of you is not there. It's like I always think, oh, did I forget my viola somewhere on the airport? Yeah. And what I do now in Bulgaria, because August is usually when we go to Bulgaria in August, that's our month off. We don't work. And I have a instrument only in Bulgaria that stays there. But if I need just to keep up, if I can, it's okay to take a few weeks off when you're in off season, but when you're working, you have to do it every day.
Yeah. Okay, I'll let you continue. Thank you.
Okay, so all these skills you build in the music school, what are the professions you can actually go into? So there are a few options. If you're a singer and a classical singer, not like just folk, your dream is to go to the opera house. So opera is probably the most expensive type of art for classical music because it involves the most people and is the most complex. So you have singers that are on stage, you have an orchestra which is in the pit or on the stage, and you have like dozens, if not hundreds of people who are stage crew, because all of this needs to be moved and managed. So it involves, I played an opera recently, it involves over 200 people. And it's just all of these moving parts, it's very complicated. That's probably the most complex type of art. So you can, as a musician, you can be the orchestra, in the opera orchestra, but that's always secondary to the singers who are on stage. And this is Krasimira Stoyanova. She's a very famous Bulgarian opera singer. I think she lives in Vienna. But she went to one of those music schools created by the communists in the 40s that still exist in Bulgaria. And it's a really amazing way of doing it, because you need a lot of, like, only the very best of those people who go to those schools get jobs. It's very competitive. And it's incredible that Bulgaria, which is such a small country, has musicians in the best places in the world. I'll talk more about that a little bit later. She's one of them. She's a top singer. Unfortunately, she got her education in Bulgaria, but she does not live in Bulgaria anymore, because the opportunities for professional development and salaries are not good at all in Bulgaria. So abroad is where most of the best Bulgarian musicians are at work. Okay, another, if you're a string player, you can try to be in a quartet. This is a very tricky profession, because this is the Danish string quartet, for example. You travel, like, if you're successful, you travel all the time, like 300 days a year. You travel, so you almost never see your family if you have one. But you spend almost all your time with your quartet buddies, and you better get along with them. You share hotels, and you travel, and you work together. It's very tricky, because for people who get along for decades and spend so much time together, it's hard to find. It's hard to find. What else about this? It's very fulfilling. For example, I have a very good friend who was in a quartet like this, American quartet. And she wanted to have kids. It's impossible to have kids and be in a quartet, for example. It's just, you're never there. And also they cannot work without you. So it's a 4-team ensemble, and it cannot work with 3. It's just impossible. So if you cannot do it, they have to wait for you always. So it's very demanding and very rare. This is Svetlin Rusev. He's a soloist. This is another path you can go for. This is a really, like, rare to become soloist. You have to be at the top 0.0001% of all musicians to have a career as a soloist. He's Bulgarian. He's from Russia. He had an orchestra job before, but he decided it's too boring for him. And he travels the world now and plays. He comes to Plovdiv, I would say, at least once a year. And he's fantastic violinist. He's absolute world class. Like, yeah, he's top, which is also incredible that we have actually a few violinists at this level with the Bulgarian. It's absolutely, yeah, it's incredible. And that's due to the investment of the state in education of this sort, which is very expensive. What is the lifestyle soloist? It's similar to the quartet, but it's just you're on your own. You travel the world, you play with orchestras every week, a different city, different country. I mean, looking at his calendar, he's in Korea, he's in China, he's Japan, Europe, US, South America. In 1 year, he can go around all the 5 continents, maybe besides Antarctica. So you're on the move all the time. So having a family, very tricky with this type. And also when you're off, you have to practice a lot, because the music is very hard, the one. And it's very exposed, so you cannot just, fake it. You have to be 100% all the time. And or you can, another path you can go for is teaching. So for example, I teach. This is my secondary, it's not my primary income. and I have a few students. Some are really good, some are not so good. What's interesting here in the US that is very unusual for Bulgaria is here adults take lessons. I have a nurse who is in her 40s, takes violin lessons. She just for fun. And I had somebody who who worked in in an internet company. He also took violin lessons. So that's something that's very unusual for Bulgaria, at least in my experience. Like older people to go into music for fun. Also, my mother-in-law, she's in her 70s. She has been taking lessons all her life. She still does, which is, yeah, she's an amateur violinist, and they're all amateur. But there, it's cool. Yeah, it's cool to teach people who are interested, even though they're not very good. And they started much later, and they don't spend. They have other jobs, so that they cannot practice 6 hours a day. But it's cool how curious they are, and I find this really cool. So this is my secondary type of income. I teach. How many students do I have? Like 6 or 7. I usually teach them once a week, each. Or what many classical musicians go into is orchestra. So orchestra, that's where the most opportunities are because they're the most positions. But again, usually you get a job through an audition, which is behind the screen, so it's anonymous. It's, for example, for the job I won, there were like 85 people auditioning. And there was only one spot. What's really tricky in this is that there is a committee which has some certain level of really high expectations what you should sound like. And on top of that, so basically, usually there are different rounds, and by usually 3 rounds. And by the 3rd round from this 85, there are like 2 or 3 people, and those are the people the committee thinks they're qualified for that job. And then you have to be the best of all those last people, it's very tricky. And it's also very, you need to have some luck, because if somebody, even if you're qualified, if somebody amazing shows up and it's better than you, they'll hire them. And that has happened to me. I've been to a few finals, and somebody was better than me or the other candidates, and they got that job. And it's you need some luck that when you show up, nobody better than you shows up. And what is better is very subjective. Different people, what sounds good or not, there are certain things that are not subjective, but there are certain things that are subjective. So you need some luck for this as well, and a lot of ability. Without ability, it's impossible. And I can talk a little bit about orchestra jobs. So we have concerts. So they start from Monday. Monday and Tuesday are usually off. Those are our days off. Then Wednesday we have 1 rehearsal. Then Thursday we have 2 rehearsals back to back. The rehearsals usually 2.5 hours with a 15-minute break. And then Friday we have a dress rehearsal, which means it's like we run through the concert more or less, and we rehearse a little bit after it. And then in the evening is the first concert, Friday evening. Then Saturday evening is the second concert, and Sunday afternoon is the 3rd concert. Like to be in orchestra, I mean, it's very demanding because every week you have really hard music to learn, and over the years it starts repeating. So once you've played certain pieces, they get easier next time you meet them. But still, they're very hard, and it takes hours and hours and hours to relearn them even. Like technically and mentally hard. For example, I played this opera recently. Sunday was the last performance, and it's 2.5 hours, and it was like, but 2.5 hours you're at 100% like focus. Like there are no breaks. You play all the time, and it's really hard stuff. And it's something I had never played before. I mean, nobody had. It's a rare piece that is not played often at all. And it's like, I think for the whole orchestra, it was very hard to be at 100% for the full 2.5 hours, because usually it's not that hard. And after that, you're completely brain dead. Like I couldn't have a conversation here, like a normal conversation. I was completely like exhausted. So that's part of it. Usually not every week is that hard. But still, you need very high level of concentration for the duration of the concert, which is around 2 hours usually. And you have to be in a very good physical ability. So if your mental or physical ability is not there, you're done. It doesn't work. And that is why that many people cannot do it there's once they hit 60s, they start thinking about retirement because it's too much. And like most people, their arms start giving up. So what we do for that to maintain our physical ability is we exercise and we go to massage every week, which sounds very, fancy and like a luxury, but for us, me and my wife at least, it's impossible for us to work otherwise. If we don't go for a massage for a month or two, and then it's you just stop playing because you cannot do it anymore. Just your muscles tense up, and like playing for at least our instruments, it's very a natural position for both arms, and it takes a toll on the body. And for example, my wife got injured in college. She didn't play for a whole year, and she had to go to physical therapy, and she had to build more muscle. Basically, part of it was she was too skinny, didn't have enough muscle in the upper back and upper body, and just her arms just gave up, couldn't do it anymore. So it's very dangerous. For example, my sister also was a professional violinist, and she's injured too. But she's injured like very seriously for life. It's not only from playing. She was in a minor car crash that messed up her neck. But she cannot play anymore, even though mentally she's at her peak. It's very sad. So it's a very demanding job, both mentally and physically. And this is a picture of the Berlin Philharmonic in their home Philharmonie, it's called. This is one of the best orchestras in the world. And why they're best, I have a few tips. So first of all, they have huge financial support from the state. Both the city of Berlin and the federal government in Germany. So they can really focus on not making money, but on quality. Not quantity, but quality. For example, where I work, we don't have nearly as much support, not even like close. So we have to, half of our season is what they do, classical stuff, which is quality, but the other half is pops. We call it pops. So it's popular stuff with singers and like stuff that is not challenging for us. It's just, for us, it's basically wasting our time and our talents for it. But that's what's, at least in here in Denver, audience is not as educated as it is in Berlin. So pops are sold out and classicals are not sold out. So for us, we need to, a big part of our budget is ticket sales. So to be able to meet our budget, we need to play a lot of pops, which is unfortunate. And most US orchestras are like that because the state here, like the cities where they're in, or the federal government or the state government, they don't find it as important to have like classical, like orchestras, like it's in Europe. So Germany is probably the best place to be as a musician because they don't support just Berlin Philharmonic. They have over 100 orchestras in Germany that the federal government supports. And they have 80 opera orchestras, so 180 institutions in Germany, which is which is phenomenal. And one more thing about something interesting about China. So China is a communist country, so they also follow this Soviet model that we have in Bulgaria of specialized schools, like the music school, where you start very young and you're very focused on it, and a lot of resources are spent on you individually. So, for example, in China, more kids now are playing instruments, classical instruments, than the population of Germany. So I think in the next decades, I mean, I already know many good Chinese musicians, but it's going to explode in the next few decades because they put so much, they invest so much in this. So they have over like 70 million kids playing instruments. So I'm sure at least 1,000 will be amazing. And why do we do it? So the very cool thing about the orchestra, well, for our British guests, this is Sir Simon Rattle, who's English, conducting the Berlin Philharmonic. Like the really good orchestras with really good conductors, you get to this, you can get to this level, which is kind of a nirvana level, where the energy of most orchestras are around 100 people, where the energy of these 100 people is channeled into one like spot, and and it's like, yeah, there's this. It's hard to describe. It's but it's this feeling that is like you're part of something much bigger. And this is, but it's a rare occurrence. So for the best orchestras like this one, Berlin Philharmonic probably happens very often, but for us, does not happen very often because the quality of musicians is not as high, and also the conductors we have are not as good. It happens from time to time, but not on a weekly basis. And when that happens, I think even in the when you're in the audience, you can feel that energy, and that's something really why we're practicing and investing money in all. This is the real special type of feeling. I would call it nirvana, where we have goosebumps from the music. And I hope you experience it one day, because it's a unique feeling. Okay, and education is very expensive, but what's really important as well is infrastructure for the musicians. So this is to the right part of the picture is the Elbphilharmonie, which is a new hall in Hamburg, Germany. It's brand new, like 2 or 3 years old. It costs 900 million euros, and it's probably one of the best halls in the world now, modern halls, and it's fantastic. It's built especially for orchestra. Not opera, not theater, not other things. It's so the acoustics matter a lot in the hall. How the orchestra, the different members of the orchestra can hear themselves, each other on the stage, and how the audience can also hear them. So really good, like amazing halls. You can hear individual musicians, like in the orchestra. Like it's the clarity is so good, but that's not most halls are not as good. So this one is incredible. It's very expensive, even though thinking about Germany just spent 100 billion on defense. They could build 100 of these halls without money, for example. Just saying. But this is a unique hall. I wish in Bulgaria we have such a hall one day. I don't see it happening, but to me this is the highest level of civilization. Like what civilization can achieve, like one of the highest levels. Like if really developed civilization, I think should have like infrastructure like this. And this hall is so cool that now orchestras from all around the world come to it just to play in it. And now the citizens of Hamburg can hear the best musicians in the world, which is pretty cool. I hope we can attract such musicians to Bulgaria, like at some point, that are not just Bulgarian born, but like foreigners. For example, in Plovdiv, we don't have a really orchestra hall at all. And the best places for performance are actually the stuff from the Romans, the amphitheater next to the Bunadalnik Pozara, and which has a very good acoustic. And the 2 basilicas from first and second, third century, they're amazing venues to perform, but none of them are orchestra halls. And we inherited them from the Romans, so we didn't really build them. Something funny. And this is something else that might be funny for people. I don't know if you've heard of this guy, but he's kind of at the end of his life now, but he was one of the best violinists of the 20th century. And he's disabled as well, actually. So he wrote a book how people should construct infrastructure for people who cannot walk. And basically, the bottom line is, where once the project is done, get into a wheelchair and just try to get everywhere in the facility without getting out of the wheelchair. If you're able, it's a good facility. If you're not able, it's not good enough. And something about actually good stuff, if you're interested, that is in Plovdiv. So this ние на музиката в Балбановата къща, that's the concert. Me and my wife were part of this festival last year. We had a concert in the Balbanova къща, Balbanova house, and this is the opening of this season. And the soloists here are world class. So world class musicians don't come very often to Bulgaria or Plovdiv. So if you're interested, I would suggest to go. It's also, the venue is the Episkopska Basilica, the big basilica next to Ponedjeljnik Pazar. And the venue is incredible, first of all. And with incredible musicians, I think you have a treat. Unfortunately, I cannot go because I'll be here working. But it's for Plovdiv, that's very rare to have world-class musicians at the world-class venue. It doesn't happen almost ever. So I would recommend you go. This is on the 22nd of May at 6:30. And Albena Danilova, she's Bulgarian. That's why they're coming. She's from Sofia, though. She's the first concert master, woman concert master of the Vienna Philharmonic, which is also one of the best orchestras in the world. They also have one of the best halls in the world. They're also very well supported by the city of Vienna and the state of Austria. So they can also focus on quality, not just filling the hall for whatever. But also the Viennese public is very, very well educated. So they appreciate quality, which is not always the case everywhere in the world. So the flutist is one of the principal. He's Austrian. He's the one of the principal flutists. So he's one of the best flutists in the world. To get that job, you have to be in the top. And the pianist, I don't know, but I'm sure it's going to be great. So if you can go, if you're interested, and it's in Plovdiv, which is a rare occasion to have this quality of stuff, I recommend you go. Okay, you have questions?
Yes, first of all, thank you very much, Koko. I know a little bit about the world of musicians, because I know quite some musicians, but they are also more in the pop area. I have two questions. The first one is, till what age can you perform at such a high level? That's the first question, depending, of course, on the instrument. And the second question is, you said top pop or something. I would like to know what pieces do you classify under that? Because I used to have a music teacher, and we're often analyzing plays, and of course you start with the Four Seasons by Vivaldi, and then you go to the more complex pieces. And he always said, look, the violins, they play. And then he compared it with modern music from the 70s and 80s. You will remember, hit. The violin was always used like a counterplay to the pop singer, and he called it awful. He says this is destroying the violin. So that's why I was wondering, what are the kind of plays or the kind of music then that they ask you to play that you really think, what am I doing here actually?
Oh, it's all pop stuff is like that. So pop musicians, pop music is a simple type of music in general, which I don't want. It's not. I don't want to try to insult it or something. It's just it is. It's you hear it twice and you remember it. And those musicians are not classically trained, so they don't know what the orchestra can do. The orchestra can do like unlimited colors and sounds, and it can do like really unlimited amount of things. And they use the orchestra the most simple way possible, because that's their understanding of music, and their education.
That's a little bit the trend now with pop musicians traveling around the world, and in every city they do it with
different orchestra. Yeah, we do that a lot. That's part of the pop stuff we do. We had how is it called in Bulgaria? R&B, like rap singer recently, and he's very popular. He sold out 2,300 seats 2 nights in a row. So it was sold out. We can never sell like that for a classical program here. And he used the orchestra as a background in a way. I mean, I don't think he wanted to. He just that's what his capabilities for using the orchestra.
All right.
And in classical stuff, let me just make in classical stuff. So the composers we play that we like playing, music is much complex. They're a completely different level of understanding color, understanding rhythm, understanding many things. But you also need audience that is more receptive to that. That's gonna spend some emotional and logical energy to understand.
Do you also classify under that, for example, the very popular classical music? I mean, the let's say the pop songs among the classical music, is that also categorized in that area for you, or
not they're better than that, but they're in terms of classical music, yes, it doesn't have to be complicated to be good. But the more you know, the more complicated more interesting it is. Because the more complex music arises more feelings in your body and more thoughts in your brain. And that's more fulfilling. At least I find it more fulfilling.
And then the first question was, so till what age can someone perform? First of all, till what age can someone perform at such a high level? Because I understand it's very intensive. But secondly, till I mean, I guess everyone wants to have. I mean, many people want to have a family. But if you're really focused on that, as you said, it becomes very complicated to operate a family, let's say, or to manage a family, to have children, etc. So first, till what age, and then secondly, how do you manage it then? Because you're also very busy and you also have a child, so and you're also married.
Okay, yes. So so there's some prodigies that can do really amazing things at very young age. So, for example, the opera I played was for Erich von Korngold. Probably have never heard of him. He was Austrian. He died. He lived in the first half of the 20th century, and he wrote this super complicated, super complex piece at 19. Like really like top 5% complicated in the history of music. Which is super long, and it's an opera. Opera is the hardest thing to write because it has a whole orchestra plus singers plus other things. It's a choir, and it's many moving parts. So he, in terms of performance, you can be even before 10 if you're exceptional. For example, Mozart was like that.
Yeah.
Why Mozart is it?
Until what age? Because as I said, I can imagine you cannot consistently be on this drive of stress and etc.
Yes, so the history shows that most prodigies die young. Not many live over 50. Oh. So they're really intense at the beginning, and then just your life develops earlier and it finishes earlier somehow. Yeah. And I'm not saying all, but some, most, yes. Mozart also died in his 30s.
How do you manage with that amount of stress?
Well, I don't have as much stress as a prodigy.
No, but because it's quite hectic. You explained it, the traveling and etc. and that constant.
So me and my wife, we picked orchestra to play in orchestra. So that's more sedentary because we live at the same place, we perform at the same place. We rarely travel to perform. We do sometimes, but rarely. That's much more, you know what's coming, you have the schedule for the whole year, it's you know what to expect, you have like benefits, so you can get sick, you get paid, you stay at home. For example, this soloist, you work with a different organization every time, so it's not like the same, it's not a full-time job, it's like per contract. Yeah, for every week. I mean, you make much more money for every week, but so we decided to do that. That would be because we love music, we love playing, but this is also more stable. Yeah. Okay. And so, for example, we have 1 month off in the summer, which is paid, But that's like European orchestras have more than that because it's very intensive. So you cannot do it 12 months a year, every year. It's just you burn out either physically or mentally or both. And we, for example, every spring and fall, we have one relief week, which is very unique for our industry. I mean, it's normal for our industry, but it's unique for other industries. Basically, you can take a week off, just one music, but the rest of the orchestra works. But you can take one relief week just to rest. And on top of that, there is another week that the whole orchestra, once in the spring and once in the fall, the whole orchestra does not work. It's a whole orchestra week off.
So it's a little
And
bit.
on top of that, you can get another like 7 personal like days. However, the thing with us is you have to, if you work a week, you have to work everything in the week. You cannot skip. So yeah,
It's a little bit an odd arrangement. Eh? You actually work in the weekends while other people are not working.
yes.
Okay. Yep. Okay. That's a very interesting insight in the life of a musician. So thank you very much for that, Koko. Are there any questions from the other people that are attending here?
I want to say some words. It was very impressive, and when Koko was explaining all those stuff, even if you're not a music addict, let's say so, you find it's really, you can make the comparison with sports, as Koko did. For this is a very competitive field and so on. And I was thinking that what Koko said about this music school, it's pretty much the same with the sports school that what was done in the communist regime in Bulgaria, because there were very, very high level athletes. And what is funny, that they weren't really in the most popular sport. Like they were more in wrestling, weightlifting, boxing, and not in football, which is the top sport, let's say so. So this is a very funny comparison, and not really funny, but it's interesting to point out. And it's the same. Lots of these people went abroad for to become coaches and so on.
Yeah.
And it's just my reflection. I'm not such a big music fan, and I don't know much of classic stuff. I have few pieces that I like, but what amazes me, because I'm not a musician, but I have heard one piece of one composer played by different musicians, and they can differ in the feeling that you have from this, because I don't understand the notes. This is very interesting to me, because notes are the same, aren't they? When they're written, it is the same. But these musicians give you different interpretation of the written stuff, which is amazing for me. I cannot understand how is it happening. There is different energy, different feeling, different. I don't know if I'm right, Koko. I don't know, but
Yeah. That's normal. Yes. Yes.
This is quite incredible to me, because and I have a very, very a movie that I like so much about music. But do you have any popular movie that is about music? What's your pop?
Well, actually, I like one that is funny. It's a comedy, but it's called Amadeus. It's about Mozart's life. I think it's very well done. It was shot in Prague, in the 80s, and I find it's very entertaining. It's very good.
I will look for it. But have you seen the Red Violin, the movie?
Yes. Yeah.
What is your opinion? Do you like it?
It's fine. Yeah. It's basically it's more about the instrument there, how it travels through the ages, and like how different it has different history with different people. And yeah, it's cool. It is true. I mean, it could be true, but really the good instruments go to the best people now. Like they're the best instruments, at least the old ones, are all owned by
Mhm.
really rich people and foundations.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
get from one to the next, and they're insured and they maintain very well. And just one caveat: so not all instruments. Some instruments, their value goes up with time, and some instruments not. So string instruments, they can last forever if they're maintained properly. So their value
Mhm.
goes up usually with time. But for example, woodwind and brass instruments or percussion, they deteriorate. The best time is at the beginning,
Mhm.
and they deteriorate, so they last 10, 20 years, so their value always tanks over time. And then you have to replace it. For example, if you have an amazing instrument you love, you can have one instrument all your life as a string instrument. But if you play brass or woodwind, you cannot. Just impossible.
Yeah, that's interesting too. Thank you, Koko. It was a very, very interesting presentation.
It's good that you mentioned the Mozart movie, because I think Thomas Hodge put down there a very nice, it's a little bit a caricature of Mozart, but there are a couple of aspects in there. The fact that he started very young, the competition with other musicians, because they had to please the court in Austria, because they were the mecenas, they were the people putting money to them. There was actually a very nice movie from 1984, I think, or something like that.
It's the 80s, yeah. I think it's well done. It's very good acting. The main actor who plays Mozart, I really
At
like.
the same time that Falco leads his Amadeus song as well, Rock Me Amadeus. Okay, Graham, do you have any question for Koko?
Not for Koko on the talk, no, just a discussion for after questions about the next
Yeah.
prospective members.
Okay, we'll come to that immediately after I shut down the broadcast. Paniotis, do you have any question? Did you like the presentation with Top and Top? Very much. Okay, so Koko, once again, thank you very much for this nice presentation. I will stop the recording now, and then I will share it afterwards with the members. Is it okay also if you share it publicly? Do you have a problem with that? Or would you prefer to keep it within the members?
Oh, you can share it publicly, yeah, doesn't matter.
Thank you very much.